Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and today's guest is Alyssa Rade. Alyssa is the Chief Sustainability Officer for Sustain.Life, and they are a SaaS platform helping businesses across the industry define and achieve their sustainability goals. Alyssa helps lead sustainability strategy both internally for Sustain.Life customers. So, Alyssa, she holds over a decade of experience in sustainability at several different organizations, and she holds a Bachelor of Arts from Washington University and a master's in environmental policy and science from Columbia University. Welcome to the show, Alyssa.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
I had to, give everybody the full picture of, who you are, and so it's kind of a obligatory, part of the process here. So, but hey, welcome to the show. Sustain.Life, you guys are a new startup in the carbon emission tracking business. Let's talk a little bit about it. Welcome to the show, and give us a little more background on Sustain.Life.
Sure, happy to. So Sustain.Life is a carbon accounting ESG SaaS platform, and we're helping businesses operationalize sustainability. We do a lot of things, but the real bulk and core of the platform is a suite of a greenhouse gas protocol compliant calculator. So when you hear scope 1, 2, 3 emissions and carbon accounting, what our platform does is it ingests your business data from a myriad of sources, and it computes them and turns them into those emissions outputs. So you can respond to RFPs and customer requests, support mandated regulated disclosure, investor-driven disclosure, or just talk about the great things you're doing, in a standalone sustainability report.
Well, how did you guys get started? How did you get started in the sustainability industry? I mean, this is kind of a new, era, so to speak, or a new, area in the business. So talk about that. You've been there 10 years.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty pure play sustainability, ESG kind of background. I went to undergrad, I declared an environmental science major, and I never wavered from that. I continued on to get a graduate degree in environmental science and policy. But I am from New York, and I live in New York. And after school, I knew I wanted to work in something to have an environmental impact. I just thought, if I'm going to spend my life working, which as a New Yorker, that is what we are kind of calibrated to do for better or worse, that
I wanted it citizens.
Yeah, I wanted it to be meaningful. I wanted it to have an impact. I wanted it to spend my time and my brain capacity trying to solve the problems that I thought were really critical for humankind. And so in New York, what are the things that create all the emissions and consume all the energy and have the largest impact are buildings. So I actually spent the majority of my career in real estate and in the built environment, and hopped around from consulting and architectural design. And I ultimately wound up working for a large commercial owner and operator here in the city. And then coming over to Sustain, we're about a 2-year-old company. I've been here since the very beginning, part of the founding team. And the mission of Sustain.Life is all about translating really complex, sophisticated topics and making them accessible so that businesses can engage in sustainability and climate action. It can't just be the global enterprise businesses, the Apples and the Googles of the world that have a sustainability plan. It needs to be every business taking action if we're going to have the impact we need. And so that is the guiding light and ethos of Sustain.Life, is helping businesses understand what is relevant to them and material to them, where they can have an impact, and then giving them the tools to both measure a baseline, but also manage it and actually improve their environmental impact.
I think that's the biggest challenge that we're seeing as well, in the consulting business, in the industry, is where companies are really challenged. Like, how do I get the data? How am I measuring this data? What calculations should I be using to, calculate my emissions? Through the various, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, they can be challenging, and because it's not easy to discern how to use it, the factors properly. So,
yeah.
I mean, if you can create a solution that helps people solve that conundrum, that's really the trick here, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so much of this work, even at pretty sophisticated, enterprise scale companies, is happening on spreadsheets. And it's just super labor intensive, prone to human error. And it's just clear that technology can do a better job of managing those emissions factors and the data sources and processing that data, as well as helping you do things like data quality and fill in gaps and estimates. And so, that's what we've built into the platform to really help businesses understand, here's the data that you need to engage, here's what we do with it, here's what it means when, you get an output, and how you can talk about that in a meaningful way to your stakeholders that are asking you to disclose or talk about these things across various media.
Well, where do you think we are in the evolution of the decarbonization journey right now?
It's a really good question. I think that we've made a lot of progress, but we frankly have a lot of the way to go. The goal of net zero of decarbonization is to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. And right now, we're falling short of doing that. Even if all of the government pledges that are out there, if we, actualized all of them, even those current commitments are not enough to maintain that warming threshold. And so there's a lot that we have to do to really get there. There's some great resources. The ones I recommend, there's a great IEA report that talks about transforming the global energy system and what that needs to look like over the next 3 decades in order to reach this target.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. It's a lot. There's also Net Zero Tracker is a great resource, talking about like all the countries. There's 50 countries representing over half of global emissions that have set net zero targets, and that's great. But the quality of those targets vary. Some aren't robust. They're not including scope 3, which if you're not including scope 3, you're missing most of the pie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've had a lot of guests on the show, and we talk about, this whole decarbonization journey and some of the tactics or strategies to try to get there, in the built environment. You just talked about, you did a lot of work in the built environment. I've had, several interviews with, lead green, lead zero is a big new one out there, right?
Yeah.
But, solar power seems to be another one of the topics to me that is just not getting enough air on how it can really help transform the consumption of, fossil fuels by going solar. And the problem that I see is that our utility systems are really built for transmission and not, consumption, basically, right? And the cost of solar is a barrier, and it needs to be plug and play. I mean, in my opinion, we need to be able to go to Home Depot or Lowe's and say, well, here's the size of my roof, and I can buy the panels, and I'm just connecting cables down to the breaker box, and that's it. I mean, or into a battery that's down there as well. So make it so simple, the caveman can do it.
Look, I think we're making progress. I say this with the utmost respect, but my mother-in-law did it. She did it, right? She got the solar panels on her roof. She hired the service providers, and this is certainly not an industry expert, like we're certainly making progress, but I think there's a lot of constraints with the grid. And if we get all of this capacity, you activate the solar and you do the wind projects, the transmission and distribution grid is not built to accommodate this additional capacity. We literally cannot transmit it from where it is generated to where it is consumed. And so there are major infrastructural challenges.
Absolutely. And that's where the biggest opportunity, I mean, there's all the biggest chunk of emissions are in the built environment that we already have. I mean, wow, let's solve that. And I think we'll start to get there pretty fast.
And you know what? This is, a less swanky, I'll say, kind of a less exciting approach to it. But if you're in real estate, you know that the first thing you do isn't evaluate a rooftop solar installation. It's energy efficiency. You look at your current systems and what your consumption is and what projects can you implement to actually reduce consumption. And then you work on your actual energy supply.
Right. But, I think, we're getting a little too far off topic here. However, just real quick, when a solar company comes and says, hey, we can help you get to, get you off the grid. And they say, well, but you need to take a mortgage out, to do it. That's like a non-starter, right? So that's the problem. We got to solve that. If we could do that, we're going to make big impact. Because a lot of people want to make a big impact. Well, look, I mean, the decarbonization journey really is, we're on it right now. Many people are addressing it in different ways. We're seeing companies now really drive the message, from the corporate, C-suite executive ranks all the way down to the everyday worker. It's happening. So how's the conversation changing, with these boards that you've seen
Yeah.
through your interactions with Sustain.Life?
Yeah. So I think, and I do a lot of speaking with the accounting profession, which really approaches sustainability and decarbonization from the enterprise risk management space. So really like focusing on that governance and oversight. And I think ESG has really become a board issue. This is something that is material to investors. So many of these disclosure frameworks are investor-driven frameworks. This proposed SEC law is an investor-driven disclosure law because investors want to understand material risks and opportunities to their investments and the allocation of their capital, the same way they want to understand risks and opportunities across other things outside of ESG risks. And so I really think that it's not just about what is your performance, but what's your strategy? How are you navigating these things? How are you building in resilience to your business operation and your value chain and supply chain? And that is what really can really impact long-term value and the resilience of that business. I think across the board, we're seeing sustainability become really integrated into the core business practice and disciplines. This is no longer a siloed team. I mean, even when I started in my career, sustainability was a little siloed. You worked with other teams. But now, like, you're touching procurement and risk management and IR and operations. I mean, this is really becoming woven into the fabric of how businesses strategize and run their processes.
Well, when the procurement people are asking for sustainability information from their suppliers, it's getting pretty deep. It's getting pretty deep into the business because, they're mostly thinking, hey, I want to buy, something for the lowest price. And now that equation of the purchasing, is changing, right? They're not buying just on the lowest price. The SDGs are really kind of coming into play, and well, there's so much. It's evolving so fast too. I think that's the speed of what we're seeing is kind of interesting. I mean, it's really exciting time to be in the industry right now.
It is. I mean, I think that network effect of customer to supplier, and we have a mandate, we have goals and standards, and if you want to do business with us, we're going to ask you this in an RFP, or we expect this information from you, or we're going to make a buying decision based off this, is really powerful. Like, we so often talk about regulation because now it's so hot, there's a lot evolving in real time, but the traditional drivers of this have been that supply chain network effect, and it's market dynamics, right? You're going to do what your most important customers are signaling to you is important to them.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about digital transformation that's taking place in our industry today. And, let's, beginning with scope 1, 2, and 3 tracking of emissions, it feels like there are many different tech companies, hitting the market right now. I mean, like, you guys are in there. I've seen, I'm aware of a few others, and they're all developing good tools, and they're, some may be specific for an industry and others, because I think, not one tool is going to meet all industry requirements, because some of these, like if you're in the oil and gas industry, pretty complicated stuff with all the air emissions that are associated with, Title V permits and things like that versus, a retail company. I mean, totally drastically different. So talk a little bit about, Sustain.Life, how you're separating yourself from the other solutions and what's your target industry.
Yep, absolutely. So there are a lot of solutions on the market, and there's, I'll say they're not all designed equally. Some, as you said, are absolutely targeting embodied carbon in building products and materials. Others are targeting oil and gas or other hard to abate industries. And there's a couple of things to, if you're evaluating software offerings, that you're going to want to know about them. And I think a couple of differentiators that I'll talk about with Sustain. One is, who do we focus on? We focus on mid-market businesses. And that's actually a really significant differentiator. A lot of the tech platforms are building enterprise scale tools. That's who they want to serve, those large enterprise customers. And we really seriously believe that it's actually the mid-market that needs more help. They don't have the deep sustainability teams. They don't have the deep sustainability expertise. They're the ones that are blocked from taking action right now and really need a tool that they can engage with to unlock that.
They can't financially afford these enterprise solutions either.
Absolutely. And, another one is that a lot of these enterprise solutions they brand themselves as a SaaS solution, but they're really tech-enabled services. There's a deep layer of consulting services on top of that. And we've also taken a different approach there. We're a pure technology SaaS play, and we actually partner with consultants who have been doing this work for decades to essentially be the tech backbone so that they can scale their services and expertise to their clients.
I gotcha. Well, so do you guys just set up separate agreements with consulting companies to support them in that? How does that work?
Yeah, we have a whole partnership network, and there's a whole slew of different commercial arrangements of how it can work. But that's been a really meaningful partner for us because they are the ones that have deep expertise in the space,
Yep.
have deep client connections. Also, businesses aren't looking for more service providers or more tools. They want to consolidate, they want to streamline. And so being able to kind of scale existing relationships, we're happy to do that, right? We just want to be the technology platform that empowers all of that action.
Have you had any of those types of, I'm just kind of curious, have you had any of those types of arrangements with your partners where you white label your application into others, so it's seamless into somebody else's solution? It's okay.
Yep.
All
We
right,
do a
that's
lot of
good
white
to,
labeling.
yeah, that's
Exactly.
good. That's good to know. I mean, that's a great alternative for someone who already has a good solution for a few other aspects of, the value chain of maybe EHS or something, and they just need
Yes.
that piece,
Yes.
to be more comprehensive.
Yes, the partnerships ecosystem is so critical. Let's not all build the same tool. Let's all understand the different niche approaches that different tools have, whether you're coming at it from a governance perspective or a compliance perspective or an EHS perspective or a
Right.
broader ESG perspective, and
Yeah.
connect with tools and providers so that you're building a robust solution that can solve all the business's needs.
I love that approach because we find in the market too that the differentiator by having that consulting expertise and a solution really does help you separate from a traditional SaaS product who
Mhm.
they're just giving you the solution, but figure it out yourself. And most of the clients are struggling to, do the figuring out themselves or have the manpower to do the actual heavy lifting to do the work. Because there is a bit of, manual labor. Unfortunately, you can't automate everything, right?
Yeah.
There is that domain knowledge you need to be part of the process. And so I think there's a good value there. But it's great to hear that you guys do partner with people like that, and that helps bring a full ecosystem or a life cycle of solution to the clients. Well, what do you think is like some of the most challenging part of setting up a user in Sustain.Life's application? What's the biggest challenge or mental issues that they may have?
Yeah, I think, the actual setup, like creating the account and, putting in your location is very easy, right? Like that's like
Yeah.
a very clear process. So, I think of it more in terms of onboarding and activation. And to us, we define that as getting a baseline, measuring a baseline. And I think the hardest part about doing that is access to data. And I think that's universal across whatever scope you're doing. That's the
Yeah.
hardest thing. It's access to data. And I'd also say for businesses just starting out with this, it's really understanding your organizational boundaries and activities so that you're properly establishing the ecosystem that it is you're trying to measure and manage through this application.
Yeah, I mean, getting the data and having access to it has been what I've seen a big challenge for a lot of companies trying to, adopt a new system. And you're
Hmm.
like, hey, okay, can you give us all your past records? And they're like, oh man, you know, we really don't have a great. I mean, it's like herding cats, right? It's
Yeah.
like, let me go get this
Yeah.
guy and he handles it really nicely in his own little special access database, or this guy's been using spreadsheets for 20 years. And this
Yep.
guy's, you're lucky if it's in his Outlook inbox, I mean, it's
Hmm.
all over the map, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's a big challenge.
It is.
Um,
We meet the user where they are. So we're very, again, like we're a technology platform. We're integration heavy. So we're fully integrated with utilities. Enter your credentials. We're automatically pulling that data. Similar integration that we've built for ERP systems. That said, a lot of users still do start with like a bulk upload. So just taking what they
yeah.
do have and getting it in the data template and pushing it in. But it's absolutely all about meeting the business where they are. What data do they have available? Where do they need help filling in gaps? How can they be clear and transparent about where gaps are estimated and perhaps proxy information is
Yeah.
used versus real primary data?
So I'm assuming you've got customer success people that help the clients get started.
The best ones, the best in town. Absolutely.
It's like, hey, the template's not working. Well, you
Yep.
put it in the wrong column.
Yep.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yep. So I'm with you. Well, let's talk about a little bit about the tools available to users that, to capture the scope 3 data. I mean, are there any integrations with utilities or templates they can use?
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that, because we're not showing the application for users or for listeners today. This is all, conceptually in the cloud in their
Totally.
mind right now. But
Yep.
let's give them a concept for it, because then they can go to the website and then they can see some, more, and maybe get a demo.
Yep, absolutely. So like I mentioned, we're very integration heavy. So we integrate with utility aggregators. So it's not each individual utility. We work with those that aggregate thousands of utilities across the country with some international coverage as well. So utilities are really the easiest ones. We built something similar for ERP systems to pull your transactional level data. And then we also have the bulk import templates, which again, some users prefer to use that. It's challenging. The data quality problem is really tricky. And I think utilities is probably where we see the most use. If you can't be asking this office manager and this facility manager and check that spreadsheet, it really needs to be automated and easy. And so we've really prioritized that from the technology standpoint, which is another thing. If you're looking for a platform, these are questions. And I just to go back to that for a second, questions that you want to ask of the platform, of what's meaningful. Do you have data automation and integrations? Do you have full coverage? A lot of platforms for scope 3, it's limited to a spend-based proxy of purchased goods and services. And outside of that, there's no opportunity for primary data to kind of fill in these things. Some are going to be sector specific. So it's really about understanding, okay, what do I need? What coverage do I need? And asking some of those questions to see, does that platform or offering have the kind of tools that's going to be able to support you?
Yeah, the one of the challenging scope 3 data sets is waste for a lot of companies, because it's managed, in a bifurcated way, I guess is one way to say it, or just, it's managed by individuals at locations that aren't connected. There's no platform. There's lots of touch points.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
mean,
labor intensive to keep the data organized. That's the other part of it.
It's still a manual process. I have a very sweet spot for waste. I spent a lot of my time in real estate. It's not the sexiest part, but like waste management is a large part of sustainability in the built environment.
It's one of the big legs of the whole scope 3 that needs to be factored in. And there are a lot of really good things that can be done about reducing emissions through recycling and, waste reduction and things like that, which will help drive that zero carbon emission, or the reductions. So I think we don't want to underestimate those in that area too. But so you've got templates that help people get their data in. That's really good. So I saw that there was an ability to conduct supplier assessments. Talk about what that is about and what does that mean for the user.
Yep. So scope 3 for emissions, but also just having supplier code of conduct and wanting to understand your value chain and push the standards of your business onto those of your supply chain. We have a module that's built into the application where you can essentially reach out to all of your suppliers, upload contact information, send them a survey, ask them questions, things related to environmental stewardship, ethics, fair labor, working conditions, a lot of the kind of responsible business questions, opportunities to customize things. And then of course, scope 3, clear questions around, do you measure your emissions? Can you allocate emissions to me? What allocation method did you use?
Right.
What categories of emissions does this represent? Because it's not just the numbers, it's really understanding the methodology of what does this number represent. And I do think that's a piece that sometimes gets lost because people just, whether it's checking the box, whether it's, oh my God, I got a response, but it's, is that an allocation based off their scope 1 and 2? Does that include scope 1, 2, and 3? What kind of allocation methodology did they use?
Yeah.
And, they're important questions to really understand the value of the information that you are getting.
But it's great that you've got a tool that helps the user, bring in their supplier base. I mean, and get that information from them through that survey. I mean, that's impressive, because I think people struggle. They're like, Oh, you want me to get my procurement people to do that? Because now that's like adding other layers of things onto their plates too. This can help them, right?
Yep. And again, like having a single dashboard, the output of our supplier assessment is like a heat map of risk. So it's okay, based off of your supplier's responses and the documentation provided, these are the ones that are risky for you to be doing business with. Their answers aren't looking so good. And then you
Right.
can say, oh my gosh, I got to focus on the top 20% of my spend and make those all, be not risky and get a green light here.
Yeah.
So it just helps kind of provide insights and indications into where you should be focusing your efforts. And then, of course, how do you manage and improve those? We have a whole management platform of how do you actually operationalize these things and engage with your stakeholders and all of that.
No, that's really good. Yeah, exactly. Well, are there reports or action plans available to users? Because I mean, I think the biggest hurdle for a lot of companies is developing, an ESG, strategy or a plan that they can follow and, disseminate to staff to really help them understand.
Mm-hmm.
Here's our vision. Here's our goals. Here's what we're trying to KPIs we're trying to achieve.
Yes, and that's why I always say operationalizing sustainability, because that's what this is. Reporting and disclosure, measuring, important. But like, why are you doing these things? You are doing them to have an impact on your business and to achieve your goals. And
Right.
so I think another differentiator in our platform is we have a whole managed section. So we've got 120 actions over key impact areas, things like energy and emissions, water, waste, business strategy, smart workplace. And these are actual actions and recommended guidance of what you can do to improve your sustainability program and policies. And that
Wow.
comes with a whole list of helpful things. You've got policy language and downloads and templates and workbooks and things, the tools you need, communication templates to actually put this into action in your business and work across, stakeholders, whether it's across different team disciplines or executive leadership or with your consumers or, end customer.
Well, that right there, just having access to that is probably a game changer for most people in the buying process here, because that's like one of the big, I think, outcomes most people are really excited to see, get their hands on is, this is going to help me create my roadmap.
Yep, exactly. And having that roadmap of just like basic project tracking, right? Like due dates. Is this started? Do I have a goal end date? Where am I in this process? It's really helpful to organize and solidify those efforts. And also, you mentioned the SDGs before, but translating or connecting the activities and programs and policies that you as a business have put in place and how that supports or otherwise connects to these disclosure frameworks. Does that support an SDG? Are you doing something in that effort? We've mapped that all in across the UN Global Compact and GRI and like major frameworks to
Yeah.
help tie that knot, because when I was in-house, I did that exercise manually. It was
Yeah.
okay, we're going to report to GRI, we're going to report to the UN SDGs. Let's think about all the things that we do in our business and all of our programs and try to tie them up to see which one,
Yeah.
target
Which
this
it connects
supports.
to and how it
Yeah,
supports. Yeah. Right. Leverage that information to make it more, well, to help you, meet your goals. Right. I mean, and
yeah.
show how it does and improve it. So I really think that's really powerful. I think when you think about, a user journey and they go through this process, I mean, talk about how long does it usually take a client to really kind of get started and feel like they're actually, hey, we got this under control, we're using it, because
Hmm.
they're the ones actually using the application. There's
Yep.
no one else really doing it for them unless it's a partner doing it for them. And that might be the
Hmm.
most scenarios. I don't know, but how many are buying the application and they don't use a partner? It's just them doing it.
Yeah, plenty. We have a lot of direct clients as well. And the time varies based off of the complexity of the organization, their goals of what they're trying to do in the app, and the access to data they have.
Right.
So, to put a benchmark or bandwidth around it, like 4 to 6 weeks is kind of average. It can certainly go beyond that if you're really struggling to get data. It can certainly be shorter than that if you've got integrations and data is just coming in and you kind of
Right.
come in and know what you're doing.
So, developing all the factors, the carbon emission factors has got to be one of the more, I guess, complicated, challenging things. I mean, is there anything in the application that really provides the export of like, here's how we arrived at this calculation, so you can prove to, an auditor?
I, Could not have asked for a better question. We are very, very proud of this feature. A new feature that we launched last quarter is called our audit and verification view. And this is literally meant for users that are trying to get assurance or third-party validation. And for every single calculation that takes place in the application, it is back-end transparency into where did this data source come from? Is there an upload document to support it? Was it a manual entry? Was it an integration? And then what emissions factors and data sources did Sustain.Life use to translate that into not just your CO2e carbon output, but all the constituent gases, methane, nitrous oxides, every single constituent Kyoto Protocol greenhouse gas. And that's really, really important because for businesses that are used to doing this, if you're getting assurance and your assurer says, okay, I'm going to need your documentation for the carbon emissions so I can replicate this. Mm-hmm. It is such an effort to hunt down every single source and what did I use for waste, and I don't know, what did my provider use for energy. And so having that all in one platform is an incredible time saver.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear, because that there again is another one of those key features that's like, okay, from an auditing perspective, I can validate this, it'll have quality assurance. I mean, essentially what sounds like you've almost developed is almost like a mini sustainability EMIS, system. I mean, think about it. I mean, you've created this like ISO little EMIS system that's just all SGG and ESG. It's all connected, and it gets your blueprint. That's really, your reports. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, we love building what we build, right? Like, it is the most gratifying job to be able to build this product and technology based off of customer input and market insights. And it's just such an exciting space to work in. And also knowing that the product that you're creating is having such a beneficial impact, to businesses and to the world.
Well, talk about what it's like working for a startup.
It's really fun, honestly. Like, it's just really fun. My personal background is much more of a corporate one. And so it's just been incredibly liberating and freeing to be problem solvers and navigate these complex issues and work across disciplines with product and engineering and designers of how do we design a solution that is accessible and intuitive and impactful and important. And especially in this space, there's just so much evolving in real time, and it's really collaborative. Like I said, like the partnership network is so important to us, understanding what customers' needs, their unique needs. It's just a really, really fun, exciting space to work in.
So what's been like the UX conversations been, with the design? Because I've always, most of the developers I've worked with, they've got a vision of just doing things, but they don't always see the UX side of it all,
Yeah, no, I mean, our design team is incredible, honestly. Like, every time we demo this platform, we get such praise for just how intuitive and thoughtful and like accessible it is to actually use. And they're incredible. And our design team is involved from day one of conceptualizing our features and just thinking about the whole UX and user journey. And so it's just a delight and like really cool and interesting to be able to work so closely with them. It's not a practice that I have any background in, and seeing how they can translate their skills and their craft, into this kind of product is just really, really cool.
Well, I find that, you need that domain expert like yourself communicating to that technology expert for the why, and that, they'll tell you how, but you're telling them why. And then you come together and you figure out how you can come to, build that solution. That's really, it's powerful when the teams are all working the same.
Yeah, I mean, working lockstep and working together, it's just what you have to do. And we're really lucky in that we have a product and engineering team that have worked together at previous companies for many years. And so we're just able to cycle through and iterate on things really quickly. And it's just really cool to see the progress that gets made, even when we change process or, something in our tech stack. Like, it's just, everyone's really on the same page, really in the same groove.
Well, so how many people working for Sustain.Life at the moment?
We are a company of 45.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So in 2 years, you're up to 45 people.
Yep.
Now, are you mostly in New York, or are you spread out globally, or what's your demographic there?
Yep, we are a fully remote company and we are geographically dispersed from the west coast of the US all the way over to Europe. We've got a big team in UK and Ireland. And then we stretch from, northern Maine down to southern Florida. So we're really taking a large swath. And I think that's something that's also been so incredible about working in a remote company and technology is you're not constrained by a local
Right.
workforce. We're really able to access talent and craft and gifts, from different regions. And we're
Uh,
just so fortunate.
that's great. I mean, so talk about, like, how much VC funding were you guys able to, grab to get this thing off the ground? Because you don't just start by having a great idea. I mean, well, you kind of do, but you really need to have the funding to scale.
Yeah, yeah. So, there's been the funding market, has gone through a big transformation over the past year from when you look back, a couple of years ago. But we're fortunate. We've raised 20 million and we are VC backed.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's where I'm seeing a big trend. A lot of VC, are out there looking for, green tech big time,
Hmm.
to get behind and sponsor and to try to drive the change in the industry that
Yep.
is needed, right? And I think a lot of people are also really wanting to invest in companies that they are also aligned with from, a personal perspective, environmental perspective. They're passionate about it.
Yeah.
They'd rather see money be spent on companies that can do good for the environment than some that are, polluting.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's like the mission oriented investment strategies. I also think from a capitalistic view, like this is a growing industry. There, even if there's going to be, short term blips in that growth and trajectory,
Sure.
like we are transitioning to a net zero economy. That is what's happening. And there's going to be more dollars and innovation and investment going into that space to actualize that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Well, how does the business model work for you and your clients currently? How does that work? I mean, so they come in, they sign up for a seat or an annual license, or what
Yeah.
are we talking about for the buyers here?
Yeah, sure. So, it's all product led. You go to the website and it's a tiered subscription. So it's an annual fee and there's different tiers based off of some company details around how many users you need and your size, but really more so focused on what are you coming to the platform to do? Do you just need to measure scope 1 and 2 emissions? Do you want broader ESG? Are you looking for that assurance and verification support? And that's really meant to fits where businesses are in their journey because we do support the mid-market and there's a great range of maturity in what businesses are looking to do. Some are just starting out. Their large customers are asking them for scope 1 and 2 emissions and they need a reliable, consistent, accessible way to get that information to them.
Yep.
Others are publicly traded companies that are going to be mandated by this SEC rule and they're really trying to button up and tighten up, what their internal data management processes look like.
Well, that's good. So there's a bit of I guess, a feature-based, scale. So if I
Mm-hmm.
want the platinum, where I want the full capabilities, that's the, one tier. If I'm down, I just need some minimum.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to look at it. That's really
Yeah.
good. Well, this is good. So, what's the big, what's new on the dock for you guys? Anything coming up that anybody you want to share that's going to be exciting for
Oh,
the company,
the
or?
roadmap. We have
Yeah.
so many exciting things coming. I think the most exciting is that we are launching a feature on target setting, specifically setting science-based targets. So really actualizing that path to net zero, grounding that target in the science-based, SBTI initiative and other frameworks, which companies are just looking for that level of validity and that level of rigor in, arbitrary targets are old news. If you're just starting out, they can have a place if you had one, like you always want to have a goal, but this is about setting meaningful targets that are going to get us where we need to be. And that's what we should be striving for. So we're really excited to launch that feature next quarter.
Oh, okay. So targets. That sounds good. That's really good. I guess you've got really good user dashboards. You said that kind of show progress and things like that. And what about data analytics? Do you have a nice analytic engine on the back end of this thing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of, we're integrated with Power BI reporting. There's a lot of insights and hotspots, and not just giving you your data, but what does this data mean and what do I do with it? What are the actionable steps that I can take after having this data?
That's good. So do you have a lot of clients coming to you with like custom reports? Like, hey, I need this. This is it's something that we don't have in the can.
We do have a lot of custom work. So we have like a whole custom section if you want to be tracking custom metrics, or you have custom factors. So I do think that's another thing. We're a relatively small business when you compare it to some of the major names in the space. Salesforce has a tool and Microsoft has a tool. And I think, being able to be nimble and kind of react to those kind of customer requests and fit their need is something that's appreciated, by the
Yeah.
market.
Right. No, it is because, you can't, it's hard to build like, the perfect mousetrap for everybody, right? You
Yeah.
just can't. So a lot of these types of things that some level has to have some flexibility for a little bit of some bespoke type reporting and, functionality.
Yeah, and that's honestly kudos to our design team because they're so adept at creating that kind of like modular, flexible, customizable system and doing it in a very efficient way that allows our engineering team to produce it, with a relatively low lift compared to had they designed it in other ways.
That's good. That's good. Well, look, how do listeners get a hold of you, Alyssa, so they can, get more information? I saw you on a LinkedIn video post, which I saw a clip and I was like, you know what? She would be great to come on to the podcast. We can get this information out to the listeners. And so I really do appreciate you coming on the show, but how do we get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Well, I'll say come check us out, www.sustain.life. You can check out our YouTube, Sustain.Life. We have a channel. You can always reach out to me directly. I am Alyssa Rade on LinkedIn. Alyssa@sustain.life is my email. And we're eager to talk to you. I mean, we love talking, to prospects, whether they become a customer or not. We just love to understand what are your challenges? What are you trying to achieve? What are your goals so that we can design the most impactful and powerful product to meet those needs. So
Absolutely.
don't be shy, folks. Reach out.
Yeah, she won't bite. She's easy to talk to. No, this has been good, and I'll make sure I put all your contact information up on the website so they can reach out to you. We'll get this podcast episode out here shortly for all the listeners. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and the best of luck with the Sustain Life. I'm really looking forward to seeing the progress of that application.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me.
You bet.